Well, hello and welcome to the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint live series. My name is Guy Stevens. I am the founder and executive director of the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint. I also am the host for the podcast here today. It is Thursday, December 18th, and we are excited to have another show for you today. And we're going to be talking today to Jessy Greer, talking a little bit about experience in the troubled teen industry and a project that Jessy's working on. So excited to have Jessy as a guest today. But before we get to our guests, I'll tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do. If this happens to be your first time here, welcome. If you are a repeat repeat visitor, I love the fact that we have so many people that seem to join us kind of week after week. Welcome to you as well. Always great to have our our loyal listeners that come over and over again, and it's always great to have new people joining us as well. But if you're not familiar with who we are and what we do, we are the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint, a very small nonprofit based in Maryland, although we work across the country. We really began around the issue of restraint and seclusion in schools happening around the nation, but our mission has really grown. It's not just restraint and seclusion, it's restraint, seclusion, suspension, expulsion, corporal punishment. But even above and beyond that, it's often all the things that are done to people in the name of behavior. And it's across a lot of different settings. We do certainly focus a lot on schools, but things like the troubled teen industry have been very much part of the work that we do. Residential settings, medical settings. There's a lot of settings where things are done to people in the name of behavior that can lead to a lot of harm. If you're, again, just joining us for the first time, I want to say welcome. And then if you're coming back, welcome to you as well. Feel free in the chat to let us know who you are and where you're from. It's always fun to see in the chat where people are joining us from. So I have just one or two announcements before we get started here with the show. And I'm going to share with you my screen. And give me 1 second here. And there we go. Just for a couple of quick announcements. One, I want to mention to you one of the things that happened just recently here, and this is, I guess, kind of exciting news, is that the Keeping All Students Safe Act, which is a bill that would prohibit the use of seclusion in schools around the country, aim to reduce the use of restraint, ban certain types of restraint, add funding for schools, and really work to move away from things like restraint and seclusion. This bill has been reintroduced. So this is an opportunity for us to advocate for change at the federal level. And currently there are no federal laws when it comes to our schools around the nation. This is something you definitely want to check out. And if you go to our website, you'll find it there on the homepage, something about the Keeping All Students Safe Act. We talk about the reintroduction of the bill, but look for more information coming from us soon about that as well. One other thing I want to mention, this is, I think, exciting. We have just announced our 2026 book study schedule. So any of you that are aware, we've been doing book studies now for several years. The book studies involve, they're typically 5 weeks, and over 5 weeks, you meet once a week for 5 weeks. The last week, you generally meet the author. We have an online learning management system, and you're able to engage with the team and others through that learning management experience as well. But we cover a lot of books. We have a general series for anybody to join. We also have an educator series really designed for and run by educators. But we've just announced our schedule, and really some great stuff. In our general series, we're beginning by including Alfie Kohn's Punished by Rewards. We've got a book here called Through Our Lens, which actually 2 of the authors are volunteers here at the Alliance, Rebecca Engel and Chantel Hyde. We'll be covering the Declarative Language Handbook. And we've also got a new version of Beyond Behavior, 2nd edition, which is getting released later this year. You can even buy a bundle where you get all of these. They don't include the book. You're actually, when you sign up, you're signing up for the book study. The book, of course, you would have to have on your own. But we've got, it looks like the page is not loaded properly here, which unfortunately sometimes happens. But nonetheless, we've got, hopefully that'll do the trick. But we've got a great educator series as well. We're doing Creating a Neurodiversity Affirming Classroom, Dr. Lori Desautel's Body and Brain Brilliance. We're also doing Regulation, Co-Regulation by Ginger Healy and Your FBA as a Fantasy. So registration's open for all of those. We'll include the link, and it looks like Courtney already has. So if you're interested in signing up for any of our book studies, feel free to do that. And let's get on to why we are here today. And let me begin by introducing our guest here today. Really excited. Oops, and I made my screen go away, which is never good. Really excited to have Jessy here with us today. Jessy Greer is an actor, writer, and producer with over 10 years of experience in entertainment. After moving from Houston to Los Angeles to study at AMDA College of Performing Arts, quickly established herself in the comedy scene with comedians like Amy Schumer, Margaret Cho. Jessy's career spans acting credits on shows like Lessons in Chemistry. It's a great show. And Hollywood, performing and writing sketch comedy and co-producing her features film 818, showcasing her range and passion for storytelling. And to add to that, I Jessy kind of through a connection in the work that we do. We're going to be talking a little bit today about a project that Jessy's working on, but it really relates to lived experience. So, Jessy actually had experience in the troubled teen industry, wrote an article for us earlier this year, kind of sharing a bit about that experience. But like I'll say many of us, we have these experiences that kind of change our lives and then, end up going into interesting directions because of that experience. And kind of taking the things that we experience and turning them into things that will influence change. So we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about a project that you're working on. But before we get there, I want to introduce a little bit to our audience here. And we certainly have talked about the troubled teen industry in the past. That's something that we've shared a lot of articles about. It's very aligned with the work that we do here at the Alliance. And very supportive of as well. But I want to dive into a little bit about the troubled teen industry, a little bit about your background, and then talk about this project that you're working on. So first of all, welcome and thank you for joining us today. We're really excited to have you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. That was a very lovely introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. And really excited to have you. And again, if you are watching live in the chat, let us know who you are and where you're from. It's always fun to see who's joining us. I know there's a number of people on live as well. Of course, we do make these available after the fact. So if you missed the live one, you can go back and you can look at it on YouTube or Facebook or even LinkedIn. And we also make an audio only version available for people that like to listen on the go and just kind of consume it as an audio podcast. So with that, what I want to do is kind of introduce, I want to get to talking about the project that you're working on. And what I want to do though is kind of walk a little bit through the why, what's kind of brought you to the work that you're doing. And I want to talk a bit about the troubled teen industry and kind of your experience in that. So for people that might be listening, many of the people that are in our audience have probably heard us or seen us talk about things related to the troubled teen industry. But I wonder if you would talk about it at a high level. Like, what is the troubled teen industry and why is it that something that people should be concerned about?
Yeah, I think at least for me, how, I'm always constantly kind of getting in positions where I'm talking to people about it for the first time and they're unaware of it. They're not sure. And you're always kind of having to figure out the best layman terms way of kind of letting that land on people because they're like, oh, boarding school, for example. And you're like, well, not necessarily just a boarding school. I mean, it's a behavior modification program. And, for me, the way I look at it is it's just these organizations that exist in certain states and across the country that are allowed to get away with certain types of things inside of the programs when it comes to, the way that they're treating kids or the child abuse and things of that nature. But predominantly it's taking advantage of parents who I think are having a really hard time with their child, whether it be someone that, their son or daughter who gets angry all the time, or maybe they are dealing with mental health or they are dealing with drugs. And it's like that last straw. To me, the troubled teen industry kind of goes after those vulnerable parents because it's essentially a kind of a money scheme to me as well. Like they want to take your money because it's thousands and thousands of dollars you have to put into these organizations. And a lot of them are lockdown facilities. They exist, for example, in Utah, where I was based at Cross Creek, and they have certain laws that they can get away with there. And there's kids that are in these facilities anywhere from 6 months as like a punishment from their parents to being there for a few years, because it's just easier to not have to deal with their child. And so for me, I simply just tell people, it's a behavior modification program. um,
And it's an industry, right? I mean, it's a, I mean, certainly there are some bigger players that have had, that own multiple and have money in this. But
Totally.
it's an industry that has I mean, I think you put it really well, kind of preyed on parents. So one of the things you mentioned is that that there are these schools or facilities that you might send your child to if you have concerns about your child. Maybe it's behavior,
Mhm.
maybe very often what I think I've heard time and time again is very often it's things that children or teens or young people are doing that are actually not that out of the realm of typical behavior that you might see from a young person or a teen. But
Mhm.
sometimes that concern, and again, I mean, there can be different levels of, concerns that a parent might have, but they might be set,
Right.
set, hey, here, there's a facility, and you can send your child there, and they're going to help get them straight, kind of moving in the right direction.
Mhm.
And so parents are kind of led to believe that these are facilities that can help their child who is having a difficult time.
Mhm.
But what people don't realize is what lies beneath the surface of so many of these things. And as you were teasing that up, I was thinking about what you were saying is that it really is sometimes hard to explain these things in a very simple way, because for some degree, some of these things are really unbelievable when you dive into it.
Mhm.
Like even just the idea of kids being physically restrained and secluded in school, like that was something I would not have even imagined being done to a kid in a school. And when you get
Yeah.
into some of these behavior management programs, some of these facilities that we're talking about, the things that are done to kids, the things that are done to young people, the things that are done to teens, um, it is just almost unbelievable. And of course, there have been, I think, an increasing number of stories coming out. There have been some
Yeah.
documentaries about
Mhm.
the troubled teen industry, but it really is unbelievable when you dive into it and realize that in the name of behavior, we're doing these really harmful things to people and leading to significant trauma.
Mhm.
So and unfortunately, as you put it, I mean, very often, um, a frustrated family is feeling like, well, gee, what else do I do? And somebody says, hey, well, here's something
Yeah.
magical, and we can you can send your child there. And of course, kids end up in there in different ways. I mean, it's not always through that.
Totally.
There are kids that end up there through kind of state systems as well, and
Mhm.
end up in these facilities for a lot of different reasons. But the bottom line is these are facilities that kind of market themselves as um, taking troubled kids and helping them by, well, I mean, by a lot of things that are harmful. So
Yeah.
that industry as a whole, I mean, I think we're getting more awareness, which is good, and there's a lot of people out
Yeah.
there that are sharing their stories and sharing their experiences. But these things continue to happen. I mean, there's still a lot of places where the support that people need is not what they're getting. What they're getting is a heavy dose of behavior modification. And
Mhm.
at any rate, so why don't you tell us a little bit? You wrote an article for us at one point,
Yeah.
I think earlier this year, and the article was titled "Life After a Behavior Modification Program." You talked about your own experience at Cross Creek. Why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of your experience in the troubled teen industry? Because that really is, I think, probably what set the stage for
Yeah.
where you are today and kind of some of the work that you're planning on doing. So, and I do want to just be sensitive here to the fact, like, this is something really traumatic. I mean, what you went,
Yeah.
and I mean, um, just from a human standpoint, I mean, I'm sorry that the experiences you had, the things that were done to you in this were done to you. I mean, it's really impactful and harmful. And I appreciate you sharing this because I think it's important. But at the same time, I just want to remind you, as you're sharing things,
Mm.
if you need a moment or this is difficult, um, you know, we're here to be supportive as well. So,
I appreciate
I
that.
just understand that, these experiences really are impactful, and the trauma that can come from this can really
Yeah.
last a lifetime.
Yeah, it's a hard thing, I think, to deal with once because you're so young. You're getting thrown into a place, and a lot of these teens, and speaking for myself, but you can read on it and like they talk about it in these documentaries, is the whole approach to it is essentially to um, kind of map a kidnapping, if you will.
Right, right,
It's
right.
you're going into this child's bedroom while they're sleeping at 4 or 5 in the morning, and depending on how you react, they're restraining you or cuffing you or putting a restraint belt around you, and they're kind of like, yo, I'm going to put you in this car, and a lot of the times put you on a plane, and you don't know where you're going. And so I think the trauma really starts there because it affects people's sleep. I've been talking to adults all these years later, 15 plus years later, and they're still having nightmares or they have issues. Just like sleeping well, because there's that PTSD of kind of like, oh, if I go to sleep, I'm not safe, because when I was doing the safest thing, which was sleeping in my bedroom, like I got ripped from my bed. But myself specifically, I was it's my brother and I, and then my mom. So I was raised by a single mom, and I definitely was kind of getting involved in some things that were scary to any parent. I was,
Sure.
partying in high school and hanging out with the people that wanted to smoke and drink and failing drug tests and doing the things all my other friends were doing, and that, you shouldn't do. It's not okay. Don't do that when you're a child. But, my mom didn't know what else to do. And I think she talked to other parents who sent their kids away, and or to the school counselor, for example, to people at church, just trying to be like, what should I do? I'm at my wit's end. And so I know that she was in a position of not knowing what other decision she needed to make. And to your point of that marketing and packaging of this space, like, oh, look, they go on hikes, and they hold hands, and it's kumbaya, and they have one-on-one therapy, and your daughter's going to be like healed when she leaves, but no one really thinks about, I think, the after effects of that. And myself personally, I was there for 9 months, and I usually say only 9 months because
Mm-hmm.
I met girls that were younger than me. They were, 13, 14, and they had been there for a year and a half, 2 years. And you can't legally leave. They're allowed to hold you until you're 18. Like,
Mm,
if you're 14 and your parent wanted to be like, like, you're just going to be there. You can't even you just can't leave. Like, they're allowed to legally keep you. And I think that's also what is very traumatizing in a sense too, because it kind of puts you in this space where you feel like, I'm in jail, like I'm imprisoned in this place where you can only open doors with key cards, like you're trapped. And they had crazy rules, like you couldn't look out windows because you're planning your escape, and it was just so eyes down while you were in there. And
and communication back to the rest of the world. I mean, I know that
mhm,
in many of these cases, it's very limited. It's very controlled. It sometimes is only allowed under certain circumstances. I mean, did
mhm.
you have much communication capability and like actually sincere communication, or was that affected as well?
Um, well, yeah, there's a rule, at least at Cross Creek specifically, that you're not allowed to. I think you can get letters from your immediate
Mm,
family, your
mm,
parents and your siblings, maybe
right.
grandparents, depending on who's your parental guardian, but you're not allowed to speak with anyone on the phone until I think you've been there for 2 whole months. So not only are you like thrown into this space, but there's no way to get in touch with the outside world at all. You're just kind of totally ripped from that. And, parents aren't necessarily sending their kids letters right away.
Right.
It's not like
Right.
you can be like, hey, sweetie, how are you doing?
Right.
So it was a very slow crawl to get to that place of communicating. And even that very first call, you want to just be like, what's going on? Take me back, all the things. And I know that like the counselors and the administrators of these establishments are talking to the parents about, that's going to happen, but you're not going to take your kid back. Like, what's the dialogue you need to have to tell your kid, like, that's where you're going to be. And even when you do have the phone calls, I believe it's once a week or once every other week for like 20 or 30 minutes, and the therapist is in the room.
Right.
So for other children who had much more horrific and awful experiences with any kind of abuses, restraints, sexual
Mm-hmm.
abuses, or anything of that nature. I can't speak to that myself, but just imagine that, like you can't even be on the phone by yourself with your parent to even cry for help. And I think
Mm-hmm.
their whole MO as well was like, your kid's going to come up with the craziest things. They're going to write you in their letter that we hit them, but don't believe them because they're just going to say anything they can to get pulled out of the program.
They're trying to manipulate you. They're going to try to
Yeah.
manipulate you to, right.
So there was a lot of, I think gaslighting as
Mm,
well, which I think contributes to that trauma because
mm,
when you are being honest, you are being truthful, or you really want to reach out to your family, there's just so much like gaslighting and manipulation that
mm.
comes into place. And so going back to like my article, I think as an adult, there's still some lingering like PTSD there if you're not really fortunate enough to be working with a therapist and having that help as well. There's so much inner work that has to be done when it comes to like not being in fear of being reprimanded, or trusting yourself even,
Mhm.
and not questioning everything all the time, because they really do a number on you in there. When you would think that they're really trying to help you, it's keeping you in like a fear state.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I mean, what were I mean, certainly, there's a lot out there about some of the things that, and you mentioned, I mean, I know people that have been in facilities where they were restrained or they were secluded or forced to do, a hard and manual labor, where I mean,
Mhm.
lots of different things. But what kind of behavior modification? I mean, even like point and level systems, and escalate, kind of variable privileges that people would get, and what kind of things did you see there at Cross Creek in terms of kind of the behavior modification?
Yeah, I mean, speaking for myself, I had a therapist that kind of wanted to always kind of be in this mind game scenario with you where you just wanted to make sure you're always doing everything right, because he would, punish you by, not looking at you, speaking to you, letting you talk in the group therapy that day, canceling your phone call with your parents, always kind of saying you're not doing enough and things like that. But I was in a level system, so it was kind of based on points and
Mm,
demerits.
mm,
So
mm,
it was almost like every single little thing that you do is being monitored, and you get
mm,
rewarded for that or you get demerits from that.
mm,
So
mm,
you're always chasing this, like, not to say better version of yourself, but you're always like, I just want to do so good. I just want to do so good. And in order to get to another level, which got you, how should I put this? It gave you more
privileges
access
or
to things
yeah,
like
okay,
privileges, thank you,
yeah, yeah,
like chapstick or
mm,
body lotion, or
right,
being able
right,
to like shave your legs if you want to as a
mm,
young girl. Just
mm,
things like that. Everything was only handed to you if you were on your best behavior. And then so to get to those next levels, they have these seminars. And that's
mm,
where I think you hear a lot more about those seminars being kind of, not to say culty, but coming from that origin of like those cults that then grew into the troubled teen
right,
industries,
right,
and the way that they, put all these kids in a room and, for example, say like, you're going to go act out one of your worst traumas for all of us to see, because that's like healing and that's
mhm,
what means you're doing the work. And I think the seminars was where a lot of like the horrible practices, I think, were putting people in positions that weren't healthy by any means, and just kind of having group therapy sessions where things were discussed that probably should have been more one-on-one with the
mm, mm,
therapist, and
mm,
wasn't things that like we needed to know, because a lot of people are sent there for different things. I'm going on a
right,
tangent, but you have
right,
people, to your point, that were sent there like maybe from the state, who are living a certain lifestyle, to maybe a kid who smoked a cigarette and yelled
right,
at their parent once, to other people who are doing drugs, or girls that
right,
really have mental health problems and need like psychiatric help. So
right,
the scale of people that you're in the group with, is really interesting as well. And you see a lot of girls in there, trying to hurt themselves,
Right.
and everything is just like so hyper monitored that I think it really messes with you. I don't know if that
Yeah.
answers the question, but I was
How
just
how
like
long were
all
you
over the
there?
place. I was there for 9 months, so I left right before I turned 18.
Okay.
And they have this big thing that they do where they of course want you to stay even when you're 18 to finish the program. I think
Right.
that's where
Right.
the money comes into play, because that could be months and months and months, and they want to reward you for that. But because they can't legally keep you, you have to sign this paperwork that says like, hey, I'm going to leave, I'm out of here. And their whole thing is like, okay, well, if your parent in that other state, Texas, for example, for me, if your parent doesn't want you to come home and they want you to stay here and you choose to leave, all we're going to do is give you like a bus ticket to Salt Lake City and you're on your own. So a lot of kids would
Mm.
would leave and they wouldn't have that parental support.
Wow.
And I don't
Wow.
know, go
Wow.
go be homeless for
Wow.
a little bit or figure
Right.
out how to take however many buses back to the state that they're from. They literally just, they're like, "Go figure it out." So when I signed the thing that was like, "I'm gonna leave when I'm 18," because I felt
Right.
like I've been here for almost a year. I feel like, yeah, not only is this place awful, but I feel confident going home and turning a new leaf or
Mm,
whatever.
mm, mm,
And it was at that point that back to the gaslighting and the manipulation, I got called into this thing which was called Ron meeting.
mm.
So it was the head of the organization, Ron Garrett, and he would have these really weird Ron meetings that he would have, and all the girls would be in there. And he essentially humiliates you in front of everyone. So when I signed the thing that was like, I'm leaving when I'm 18, he called me into Ron meeting in front of everyone and essentially like shamed me and said I was going to fail and I was going to relapse and I wasn't going to make it. And like, um,
Oh.
took all my privileges away, basically.
Mm,
And they
mm,
they put you back down to zero, like in
mm,
an orange shirt, like you just arrived, and you lose
mm,
like all your privileges.
mm,
So it's just this cycle of like them trying to keep you in there and continue to break you
mm.
instead of talking to that teenager who's about to be an adult this legally at
Right.
18 and giving them options
Right.
and trying to help them if their parents don't take them back. Instead, they just kind of dump you,
Mm,
so
mm, mm.
very
Um,
interesting.
do you think there's influence of kind of strong arming parents to say, well, gee, we really want them to stay longer, and so maybe you should say you're not going to take them
Mm.
back, and yeah, I mean, is there any manipulation going on there on that end as well,
I
or
think I think so.
yeah,
I was able to meet with some other people that work in nonprofit organizations as
mm,
well that deal with like child abuse in the troubled teen
mm,
industries, and unsilenced.org is one of
yep,
them, and they have
yep,
so much data and research that they've done, and
mm,
they're a great resource, and they've got a lot of things on their website. But anyways, I was able to meet with people, and this kind of goes into play on the TV series that I'm
mm,
writing, but I have like a flash drive with files on it that are of they're like transcripts for people who worked for the companies and the
mm,
industries and the business, like Cross Creek, for example. And
right,
it's like beat by beat, like telemarketing stuff. Like, oh, well, if the parent says they don't have the money, here's what you can say.
right,
If
right,
the
right,
parent is worried that,
right,
they feel guilty, here's what you can say.
mm, mm,
So I
mm,
think that's what's crazy to me, because they literally are going to do whatever they can for your parent to take a loan out on that house or
right,
refinance their mortgage or whatever, to throw thousands and thousands of dollars into these spaces. And I, not to blame anyone on this, but like for me, for example, I'm a single mom, and I didn't go to college. I don't know how much money she took out to put me in that place for 9+ months, but just imagine that. I could just
right,
imagine,
right,
people
right,
draining their kids' college
right.
funds and stuff just to keep them there for them to just like be traumatized.
And when you left, where did you go, and did you have support? And I mean, I'm sure coming out of that is pretty disorienting, and I would
Mhm.
imagine, and having not had that experience, I'm just imagining here, but I'm imagining like there's probably this time frame where like suddenly, because this you're young, you're young, and this is something that's been done to you, and it's easy to kind of think about that and think, well, gee, But I just imagine there's this point where like, that was not okay. Like that,
Mhm.
or did you realize that right away in coming out, or was there kind of a reflection point at some point where you get out and you're like, I mean, what was that like
Yeah.
for you kind of post being there?
I think at some point I was, I really wanted to follow the rules. I really wanted to get the points. I really wanted to climb the levels. I really wanted to get out of there.
Right.
Main thing, I was like, "Oh, well, I'm out of here."
Right.
And then you're sad because I'm going off course, but you're looking at these 13, 14-year-olds and they, you're leaving them behind. So
Mm,
it's already starting right away when you're leaving. So basically when you get to a certain level, level 4, let's call it, your parents are allowed to come to the school and do like off grounds visits with you
mm, mm.
for like 3 days in a row once you get to a certain level. So my mom came, I was on a higher level, level 4. She came, she flew out, she got her hotel, and we saw each other, for from 8 to 8 each day. She dropped me back off. And on the very last day, she pulls the car over. We're like however many minutes away from Cross Creek. She pulls the car over and she just was like, "Do you want to come home?" And I just remember, yeah, I started crying and I was
Mm.
like, "Yes," like, and also scared because I don't know if that's really going to happen. So she went in there and was like, "Hey, I'm not bringing her back. I'm taking her to the hotel with me." And it was just a very strange feeling because I already felt like I was in trouble because I didn't go back. And so the next day, they had a box of my things, and my mom and I were like, "Well, let's go pick it up and, sign you out and all that stuff." And my therapist refused to come say goodbye to me. And I
Mm,
had been
mm,
working with him for the whole year. Like
mm,
the
mm.
one person who was supposed to be kind of
Right.
guiding me and mentoring me in the space essentially turned his nose up at me and was
Mm,
like, "Okay, failure." And so
mm,
that was already
mm,
such a
mm.
hit because
Right.
it's like, what? Not only can I not trust anyone because of what happened
Right.
to me to get here, but now I can't trust anyone because you're supposed to care for me and you're
Right. Right.
abandoning me essentially.
Right.
So yeah, when I got home, it was really hard because my friends didn't really understand what I had gone through,
Mm,
and I
mm,
didn't have the language or the wherewithal to know how to like express what I was feeling.
mm.
And so I felt very alone. And my family, we didn't really know how to talk to each other about it. And it kind of just was like, let's have everything go back to normal. I have my
Right.
senior
Right.
year in high school I need to
Mm,
finish.
mm,
My brother was out of the house at that point.
mm, mhm,
He was like 20 or something like that and living
mm.
in his own apartment. And I just kind of like had to readjust. I got a job as a hostess at a restaurant and I just kept trying to move forward. I don't think until my mid 20s to early 30s did I start to understand that I had PTSD. I just
Mm,
thought,
mhm,
I'm really young and I shouldn't have a boyfriend right now because
mm,
we're arguing all
mm,
the time.
mhm, mhm,
But
mhm,
when I really chose to like get into therapy just because
mm.
in my 30s, we talked about this. Obviously, it's a really big deal. So my
Right.
therapist was like, "Whoa, let's tell me about this. Let's
Yeah.
unpack it."
Yeah.
And I was started to have so much more realizations on why my heart would race in this moment,
Mm,
why I was getting a panic attack, or
right.
just talking about the dreams I was still having,
Mm.
or trust issues, or even
Right.
in the
Right.
work
Right.
in the
Right.
workplace, not
Right.
not
Right.
speaking up, not
Yeah. Yeah.
giving
Oh,
my opinion because I was like, I can't, I'll get in trouble. Like I did
right.
not understand that it really affected me. So it
Mm,
took a
mm.
while for me to learn
Yeah, yeah,
that.
and all of that. I mean, all of that. The lasting impact of trauma. I mean, the
Mm,
difficulties. I mean, you look at it. I mean, you look at some of the studies out there that they really look at the impact of trauma, especially childhood trauma when you're young. That trauma lasts a lifetime, and I mean, it can result in increased use of drugs and alcohol. It can result in difficulty with relationships. It can result
mhm.
in there's so much information we have these days about how that trauma can kind of manifest as you get older, and the
Yeah.
impacts can really be lifelong. um I appreciate you sharing a little bit about your experience there. And again,
Yeah.
I'm sorry that you had the experience that you had. And I know, I've unfortunately met many people that have been, been part of the troubled teen industry that have kind of survivors from this. And, I also know that there are, you mentioned Unsilenced, there are a lot of people out there that are now raising their voices, that are working to get better laws in place, that are
Mhm.
doing things to change the system. And it's kind of that idea of, turning that pain into power, and trying to make something, make change. I mean, in
Yeah.
fact, that's why I'm here. I mean, doing what I'm doing. 7 years ago, I worked for a university in a very different capacity, with no intention of leaving my job. But, I had
Mhm.
this experience with my son, and it led to a lot of trauma for our family. And ultimately, I'm left my job and started a nonprofit because I'm like, this is not okay. We've got to change this. You've been on your own journey, and I want to kind of transition into talking about the project you're working on, because I
Yeah.
think this is based on kind of your experience. But why don't you tell us a little bit about this project that you've got, and where it is and where it's heading?
Yeah. So my writing partner, whose name is Jess, we're Jess and Jesse. Jess Waters is not able to be here right now. I believe they're on set running around somewhere doing something awesome. So we miss Jess. But we got introduced to each other through a mutual friend. Um, I will backtrack a little bit though. A long, long time ago, when I got into the entertainment industry and I was wanting to write more, I always wanted to do something about my troubled teen experience. I didn't necessarily know how. I also think deep down I was very afraid to dive into it because it meant that I was going to have to essentially rehash all of it,
Right,
and
right.
face it. And so I was avoiding it for a really long time. And one of my best friends and business partners at my production company, actually, Kat Del Rey, she introduced me to Jess and was like, I think I have the perfect person for you that would be a great collaborator. And, you should write this. So for that, I'm very grateful and thankful. And I had journals. I kept all my journals, 7 or 8 of them from, well, hell, probably one a month. Anyway, I did a lot of
Mhm,
writing in there,
mhm,
and you
mhm,
could see the trajectory of it being very like scared and afraid in the beginning, and then even towards the very end, being like, oh no, I did this thing today. Will someone
mm.
find out? Like you could see how
Right,
my
right.
I shifted throughout being there. So I met Jess and I was like, "Hey, I want to do this thing. I Do you know about the troubled teen industry?" And they were a little familiar because her sister growing up, um, their sister growing up had experienced similar things, not necessarily troubled teen, but I gave them my journals and it just was kind of kismet in terms of being like, wow, I feel like I can be a great asset to this. And we've been working on it for a few years. Um, it's called Cross Creek. It's inspired by my experience in the troubled teen industry. And it follows a young girl who, you know, is kind of partying and doing all the things. It's
Right.
kind of a little bit mapped on my family, single mom with the brother and the daughter. And, we have the whole scene in the pilot episode where she's getting ripped from her bed and taken to the space. And then the
Mhm.
course of the show kind of follows her journey throughout the program. So it's all from the perspective of the girls inside the program. And there are other supporting characters with, the staff members and the counselors
Mhm, mhm.
that are in there. And yeah, it's a drama show. We use a fourth wall breaking tool where the character kind of stops and talks to camera,
Mm,
which
mm,
is really fun and exciting for us because that's kind of like that secret piece that the lead character has of almost like journaling, but talking to the audience because
mm,
no one
mhm,
else is really understanding her perspective but the viewers.
mm, mhm.
And, we're really excited about it. We've been working on it since the pandemic, and we've had a lot of exciting meetings with like directors who would be interested in coming on board to direct some episodes once the show gets picked up. So right
Mm.
now we're just in the space of knocking on doors of showrunners. So if you're a showrunner watching this and you want to help us produce it, but we feel like we're in the right timing of it all. I think time is of the essence because in the last few years since we've been working on this, there has been a handful of documentaries that
Mm,
have come
mhm,
out.
mhm,
There's also been that show on Netflix, which is a limited series called Wayward
mm,
that came
mhm,
out starring Toni Collette,
mm,
which is about her who's a counselor working at a troubled teen,
mm,
like wilderness program type
mhm, mhm.
facility, but it's very different because I think it's kind of like a psychological thriller type
Gotcha.
show
Okay. Okay.
versus what we're doing. But that's what's exciting because there's more and more things coming out about it in terms of shining a light, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're working really hard on getting those meetings, and I think at the very end of the day, it's been a very cathartic experience for me. We
Mm-hmm.
interviewed a lot of survivors at the very beginning so that Jess could get a better understanding of other people's perspectives and stories outside of my own.
Right.
So many people were gracious to come forward and have phone calls and Zooms with us, anywhere from, kids that were inside the program to a couple of people that worked there as, you know,
Oh, really?
as
Wow.
as their day job, and kind of
Mm-hmm.
gave us more of an insight to what that was like behind the scenes. And so,
This was people that worked at Cross Creek,
one person
or
had
other facilities.
other facilities. I
Okay.
did get to speak with one woman who worked at Cross Creek before
Gotcha.
I was there,
Okay.
who's this really awesome like artist that still does live in the Utah area. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that yes, this was going to be like loosely based on my experience, but Cross Creek isn't the only type of school, and you
Sure.
want to
Sure.
kind of do the most research that you can for something that's such a sensitive topic, because it's
Mm.
not like, I want to make a show it's entertainment, right? So the idea of a
Right.
show is
Right.
for people to be entertained, but this isn't like a joke. It's
Right.
not
Right. Right.
something
Right.
funny. It's not something to be taken lightly. So I really wanted to make sure to do that research, and also will continue to do that research. Like ideally, if this show gets made, there will be like a consultant on board
Mm-hmm.
in a dream world where you're always doing the fact checking and making sure that everyone's being sensitive to these worlds,
Right.
because
Right.
there's
Right.
different kinds of them. There's the wilderness programs. There's like the behavior modification program, like I endured. There's the other ones that are like in other countries where they give you a bucket and they put you in a cage. Like there's all kinds of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
really had to just zero in on what I knew and what I could speak to based
Sure.
on my
Sure.
experience, while also trying to sprinkle in the things that happen in these facilities in general.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that that comes across. Yeah.
So I want to ask you a question, and I'm going to veer away for a second, and then veer back.
Mhm.
But I'm just kind of wondering, because in this process, you're talking about you were meeting with and talking with other survivors from other programs, and I'm sure that there was something. Um, I think anytime you're realizing that you're not alone and there's others that have gone through similar things, and
Mhm.
and I'm sure that you hear these stories, and there are situations that continue. I mean, might even blow your mind based on the things that you experience. But before that, before you began working on the show, was there a point where you began to connect with some other survivors of programs like this, or other survivors from Cross Creek? And what was that like? I imagine, kind of leaving there, and then kind of beginning your life out of there, and feeling a little bit like an island, like, other people that you knew hadn't experienced this or didn't understand it.
Mhm.
So when did that happen for you, that you began to connect with other people that have had this kind of experience, or was it in the process of doing
Well,
this?
a little bit of both. I am really good friends with someone that I was in the program with.
Okay.
Uh, Jenny and I were in the same group,
Mm,
and we stayed connected since the day I got. She also got out because I left before her. She stayed for however a handful of more months than I
mm,
did.
mm.
When my mom and I were getting my stuff, when I was leaving, we were getting my box or whatever. Her parents were there for their visiting,
Gotcha.
3 day off grounds visit
Mm,
with her.
mm,
So
mm.
unbeknownst to me, my mom, because I was like, oh, that's Jenny's dad. My mom exchanged information with them, and that's the only way I was able to. I'm sure I would have found her on the internet
Right.
at some
Right.
point,
Right.
but
Right.
I
Right.
got
Right.
that phone number, and so when she got out, she called me, and we've been really good friends ever since. We actually
Mm.
both live in the state of California now. We're
Okay.
like
Okay.
five plus 6 hours away from each other,
Sure.
but
Sure.
we stay in touch, and we've always had a very special relationship. I think because we experienced
Sure,
uh,
sure, sure,
something
sure.
together that not a lot of other
Yeah,
people do.
yeah,
So we've
yeah.
been bonded in that way. And then when it comes to other people, I've been on Facebook groups over the years. There's all kinds of like survival
Right,
groups, Cross
right,
Creek
right,
specific groups of
right.
people from the 1995 all the way up to a handful of years ago. So there's all kinds of community-based chat rooms out
Mm,
there that have
mm,
been, I think, really helpful for people. I've found that making those friendships with like my friend Jenny, who I'm still in touch with,
mm,
and being
mm,
able to
mhm.
have phone calls and visits with her has been a lot more rewarding.
Right.
I've been doing work on the show, the Cross Creek show over the years, and I'll post about it. I made the Instagram that we have, and people come out of the woodworks that I know in California. I live in Los Angeles, and a lot of my actor friends who I just knew that they were an actor just like me, and I would see him backstage or I'd see him at a show just from posting about this. They came forward to me and they're like, "Oh my gosh, like I was also in a program in this city, in this
Oh,
state."
wow,
And
wow.
that's been really eye-opening because you're like,
Mm,
"Whoa, okay, so yeah, I'm not alone." And you're just like, there's this immediate just like bond that you
right,
have with one
right,
another because
right, right,
what you survived. And
right.
on the other side of that, it's a lot of people haven't survived. Like there were some girls in my group who aren't with us anymore,
Right, right.
and we're fighting things. I can't speak to that, but there's a lot of sadness around it.
Yeah,
Like it
sure,
really
sure.
is a
Yeah,
really tough thing, and it wasn't all like gumdrops and rainbows
right,
afterwards. So I think
right,
it really took effort to talk about it and
right.
voice it and keep certain relationships so that you had that community there, and
Mm,
it is out there if anyone
mm,
thinks that it's not.
right.
There's so much access to, meetup groups and chat rooms and things
Mm,
like that,
mhm,
so I
mhm,
think that's
mhm.
really helpful for
Yeah.
people.
Well, and I know too, I mean, the impact this can have, in families can be tremendous. And, there are people that I've met that have been in these programs that have never been able to have a relationship with
Mhm.
with their families kind of following these things. I mean, it really is something that is so, so impactful. Even,
Yeah.
when you look at, a year or, 2 years in a program like this, it just can have such a significant impact, on people's
Yeah.
lives.
It's unfortunate for some. Yeah, it's heartbreaking because there's a lot of survivors out there who, just from seeing on chat rooms and stuff like that, who, they're really going to their parents or their guardian and being like, "Hey, like this really messed me up and I'm feeling these things and I'm traumatized," really trying to come forward with just being honest with and vulnerable with their feelings and how it affected them. And I think a lot of people deal with parents and guardians who are like not open to that, who want to say like, I'm not going to apologize for like doing what I needed to do or helping you out. And it causes a lot of rifts. I know a lot of people that don't talk to their family.
Right, right.
They're like, well, my mom won't apologize for what she did to me, or my
Mm,
dad says I deserve it for my own good, all that kind of stuff. So
mm,
I
mm,
feel for those people, and I hope that they can find the proper support and love that they need from others, because their feelings matter and like their trauma is
right.
true to them, and
Yeah.
it's unfair, and it is heartbreaking, again, I'll say, to deal with, to know that people are dealing with family members that aren't supporting them and wanting to like heal,
Yeah.
or even
I
just
I think it's
having the
real.
capacity to say, I'm sorry I hurt you,
Right, right.
like just nothing. So I'm
Yeah,
very grateful
yeah.
that my mom has been extremely open and extremely supportive of everything I've been doing since. And we have really great conversations about it. And it's something that we had to heal together
Yeah,
on.
I'm sure. I'm
Yeah.
glad to hear that. And
Yeah.
I know how hard it is with so many of these things. Even, I mean, many parents at the time that they make a decision like this think that
Mhm.
they're doing something that's in the best interest of their child. And it
Yeah.
can be really hard for people to pivot from that, even when they realize that it's caused harm. It can be
Yeah.
really hard to be, kind of have that acknowledgement. And we see a lot of, I often talk about systems of care, systems of care that are there to help and support, whether it's a school or a medical setting, or there's this belief that because we're there to help, we couldn't possibly be causing harm, and there's so much harm that happens in systems of care.
Yeah.
So I think it's really tough. So from a kind of a process standpoint, so you kind of mentioned, kind of what, so let me just make sure I have the understanding, because I don't know how any of these
Okay.
things work. But is there actually a pilot that has been filmed, or are there scripts that are written, or kind of like what's been created
Yeah.
so far, and kind of like what's that creative process look like, and then what's the prospects of then kind of getting this to the next step where something like this might go into a production type of setting,
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it depends on where you want to take it as a producer. I'll speak
right?
on that. If you're in a place as a filmmaker to have, 50, $100,000 plus to like go out and film that first episode one pilot episode
Right.
and then go try to pitch it to, Netflix and HBO and the Hulus and all of that. A lot of people will do that, but it's a big out of pocket cost. So right now we've been in a position where, the pilot script, which is that first episode, the spec script has been completed. We also have the first couple of episodes that we've written to kind of show how the story has that trajectory. And there's this thing that's called a Bible. A Bible is essentially a really long PDF, anywhere from 15 to 35 pages, whatever you want to fill it with. That's you know, a Bible to the show.
Right.
It's the plot, it's the synopsis, it's what
Gotcha.
happens in every single episode. It shows you the climax, the season arc of the whole first season of the show. It ends with the
Mhm.
button and it talks about how season two can be a thing. It gives you
Mm.
every single piece of information about the characters and their character breakdowns, how old they are, what they're like, what their role is. So it's this really heavy duty thing. And a lot of people in writers' rooms, like in the productions of it, they hand people the Bible, like, this is the
Mm.
Bible, read it. It'll
Mm, mm,
give you
mm, mm.
everything you need to
Gotcha,
know.
gotcha. Yeah.
And sometimes, producers want to see something like that because they're like, well, I don't know. Is there more? And you're like, yeah, here's 30 pages of it. Like, give it a
Mhm.
read, showing that there's proof and showing that there's like a meal of sorts, like a reason to produce something like that. But for us specifically, um, we're focusing on pitching the pilot script, which is a traditional route to
Mm,
take.
mhm.
And we've been having some exciting meetings with some television directors who work in TV all the time, directing episodes. And right now we're kind of compiling a list of directors who are like, vouching for the show, who either are familiar with the material because they had a family member, yada yada
Mhm,
yada,
mhm,
or they're
mhm.
just like, oh my gosh, this is great, absolutely. So we're working with putting some directors on board, and then we're pitching it to big producers, i.e., showrunners, who are kind of the ones that run the show and take care of the whole entire production and oversee everything. And so, yeah, in short, we're taking the script out to try to get a showrunner on board so that they can knock on Hulu's door or HBO's door for us, and then we
Mm.
can go in there and be like, "We have the most amazing story ever."
Right, 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 right,
um,
right.
and I hope that the touch of it coming from being inspired by my own personal experience and also like true events, essentially, and all these documentaries and stuff coming out right now, I think we're hoping to get our
Mm,
foot in the door
mm, mm.
with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm sure that's not an easy process. I'm sure there's a lot of ideas that they kind of never make it quite that far. But it sounds like, I
Mhm.
mean, you've got something that, really. I mean, like you said, I agree with you. Thinking about some of the documentaries that have been out
Mhm.
recently, and all of that. I mean, it sounds like there's you know, a lot behind what you're doing, and certainly wish wish you luck with that and going well.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you.
do you have, kind of, again, I mean, there's the creative project in this, right? There's the coming up with a series,
Mhm.
which of course is aligned with your work and your career. But do you have greater hopes for this if this were to go into production and become a series? You're hoping that this makes people more aware, or are you hoping that this might, yeah, I mean, what do you have? I mean, I'm just, I guess, asking if you have hopes kind of beyond just the fact of like getting this to be a show.
Mhm.
What might your hopes be in terms of what kind of influence this could have in making
Yeah,
people more
I
aware?
mean, I think the biggest thing is to have a story like this even, exist, because there isn't anything like it. And I think I not to backtrack a little bit. Ultimately, yes, it's about shining a light. I really
Right.
want this show to let survivors out there know that they're not alone, for anyone that does press play on it, to get a better understanding of, like, the perspective of the girls inside of the programs, and really just kind of focusing on, where all these traumas come into play, and shining a light on the places that do have that child abuse and other things of that nature, and hope to work with other people and organizations and certain consultants on
Mm,
board, and,
mhm,
hopefully get Paris Hilton's attention. And,
mm, mhm.
you know, ultimately, I would love to continue to be an advocate in this space. And I would hope that, as an artist, that this could be a TV series that could help with the justifications of, like, trying to change the laws
Mm,
in other
mhm,
states around these
mhm,
programs
mhm, mhm.
when it's geared towards child abuse and behavior modification programs. So, on a small scale, yes, I'd love to get the show made because I'm an
Right,
artist and
right,
a
right, of
filmmaker, and
course,
that's
of
your
course. Yep,
dream.
yep,
But there is a point to this.
right,
This is a piece that's gonna hopefully be like, oh wow, I wanted to bring families together. I want
right,
that mom who's never talking to her daughter about it to watch the show and go, oh my
right,
gosh, I want to call my daughter and, like,
right.
I don't know, mend our relationship. I
Mm,
think it
mhm,
could be a
mhm.
very healing
Yeah, yeah,
show.
yeah, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of potential there and things that you
Hmm.
could cover that may reach people in ways that might not reach people otherwise. I mean, yes, there's news
Yeah.
stories, there's books, there's documentaries, there's a lot of things out there, but I mean, when you can bring stories, I mean, stories, our brains are wired for stories. Our brains are wired to be receptive to stories, and I think
Hmm.
stories can influence change. And I think great storytelling is really something that can have so much effect on on all of us. And, I think
Yeah.
there's so much potential with this. So certainly hope that as you're moving this forward, you're able to keep it going and get it into production, because I think again, there's a lot of
Mhm.
potential here, and hopefully ways to to I mean, I think you can have things that are entertaining at the same time, very educating, and
Absolutely, yeah.
reflective, and I mean, I've watched some really amazing series before that kind of at the end you just really are thinking about something a little bit differently, and
Yeah,
certainly I think there's such an opportunity for this here.
I think so. I think I like the reflective word that you used, and, very thought provoking. And, um, it's not a trauma piece. It's not to, like, glorify and
Right,
entertain people by, like,
right,
what people endure. It should
right,
be
right.
more of like a, "Whoa, I didn't know," or "They
Yeah.
did that? You can get that's legal?"
Right, right, right.
While having that story through line, because ultimately
Mm,
it's a TV show. And wanna be I'm very, very adamant about being truthful and honest, and, doing the research and doing all the survivors,
mm, mm.
right. Um, right by them, right by us.
Sure,
And
sure, sure, sure.
it's a big deal
Yeah,
for me.
and it's hard because, I mean, it's a big community, and the one thing
Yeah.
that a lot of the survivors share is, the traumatic experience, and, it's
Mhm.
it's difficult, but, I think, I mean, I think this effort combined with a lot of the other efforts that are happening, whether it's, changing state laws or trying to get federal law or whatever it may be, this is important work, and appreciate what you're doing, and appreciate that you've taken this and taken your story, and have the willingness to share it. And
Mhm.
again, I think that it says a lot when people are able to take a really difficult experience and then turn it into something to affect potentially positive change. So, yeah, I appreciate what you're doing here. Well, we've
Thank you.
about reached the end of our time here, and I know you've got another commitment, so I want to be faithful in making sure I get you out of here on time for that. But
You're
really
okay.
appreciate you joining me today to talk about the project, and I'm looking forward to updates, and would love
Yeah,
to hear more
absolutely.
as things are moving. And I encourage people again to check out the article that you had written for us previously. And if there's things that you have to share as things are going along, or there's something we can do to help or support, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, of course.
We would love to stay connected with it. So, one again, thank you for your time here today, and just continue to wish you all the best in this project. I'll give you the final word, though. Anything else you want to leave us with, or if there's anything you want to promote or anything that you want to share as we're wrapping up here?
No, just, thank you so much. Well, yes. But thank you all so much for tuning in and listening, and also for watching or tuning in or listening to this after it's been posted if you didn't get time to join us live. And thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm always happy to talk about my experience. We have
Yeah,
um,
appreciate that.
we have a Instagram called Cross Creek Chronicles. I try to post, it's hard to do all the things, but if you want to give us a follow there, it's also a great place to tune in to see what updates we've got going on with the pilot. And yeah, hope to just continue to do more things like this and spread awareness. And so
That's
thank you for
great. That's
giving
great.
me a platform, and also for doing all the things that you're doing with
Yeah.
your organization. I think it's really awesome. So
Yeah, appreciate that. Appreciate that. Anything else people can do to support the effort to make this come to life? Is there anything, aside from following you, is there anything else people can do to support the work?
if you know heavy, big top names in the entertainment industry, and you have a guy that that knows someone that
Sure.
works at HBO that wants to read the script, shoot me an email.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. I mean, I don't
Don't be
know any of those
shy.
people myself, but you never know. All right. Well, I want to thank you for joining us. We're gonna let everybody go. I'm gonna ask you to hang around for 1 second here, but those of you that joined us, we will be here again. I don't remember now because we have holidays and all sorts of things happening, but we will be back again very soon. We already have a complete podcast schedule filled for, I think, 2026. So lots of great things coming up. So we will see you again next time. Thank you again, Jessy, for joining me, and I will see you again in just a moment. Thanks.